how to correct errors in GP. If you've dealt, and most of you have dealt in GP for a while, you have gotten your share of errors, and they take all form. And some of them are easily solved, some of them are not so easily solved. And really, troubleshooting this is a science and an art. There are certain things apply in certain situations, and so today I'm going to show you how to correct some of these errors. What I'm about to show you presumes that you have access to the SQL Server and a tool called SQL Management Studio or SQL Management Studio. Because sometimes some of these things I'm going to show you can correct in GP, but there are some things you got to go behind the scenes. And this is a SQL database, and you're going to have to access, if you want to solve some of these things, you're going to need to access the actual raw live data to fix things. Okay, so we're going to go through some examples of that. I'm going to show you how to back up and so forth. But if you don't have access to that because of your corporate dynamics, then you're going to have to talk to your IT people, because this is an IT area here, to get access or get them access to that. I will try to show you all these examples and not just talk, or most of them. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I want to show you some of those pictures to the extent I can replicate these situations. When you get an error, if you were to call us, we're going to ask you a few things. And these are questions that will help you if you ask yourself these things when you have a particular error. First of all, is this a one-time problem or is this a reoccurring thing? I mean, sometimes stuff just happens. It's an aberrant thing, and it may never happen again. That's actually kind of important from a broader perspective, because say you got something that's like you clicked an error and then you clicked OK and it kind of went through, and then it posted. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, is that worth looking into? You look into it, yeah, it looks posted, you got both sides of the entry, customer's been hit, etc. That might not be one worth spending a lot of time in. If this happens every day, that's a different story. So you have to gauge how pervasive is this. This is one we will always, almost always ask you, is this problem for one user or does this happen to everyone? Guess what? If it's one user, it's probably something with that user. If everyone's doing it, it's probably not a user issue, not a security issue, not a permissions issue. It's something with perhaps your data. There's actually a corollary to that. Is this problem one workstation or is it all workstations? So these are things that you would test. If you get a problem with somebody's workstation, you log in, and I'm also kind of assuming with this, didn't mention this, that you have access to the system administrator user because they have rights to everything. So the thing you should do probably first is log in on their machine as SA. It works as SA, but it doesn't for that user, it's a user thing. If it doesn't work for SA, then try the same process on another workstation as SA. If it works there, it's probably a workstation thing. And I always ask this, I think most of the consultants do, when we're trying to figure out what changed with the system just before this started happening. So we ask the questions, and then invariably some, oh yeah, well, we just put a new server in. Or, gee, we had a power surge yesterday. Oh yeah, okay, that's that makes sense. You're looking for things that make sense, only insofar that it helps you to resolve the problem. Sometimes people will ask me, a lot of times people ask me, why did this happen? And I will tell them, it doesn't matter why. Why is irrelevant. The only relevancy that why has is if it's going to happen again. It doesn't matter why it happened. It happened, you just need to fix it. It especially doesn't, the why question is not only irrelevant, but it's also expensive for you if you're going to have us do it, because we could spend a lot of time trying to figure out why, and of course time is money, we would charge more money. Part of what you're here for is, I think, probably that you don't want to spend money with us, and that's good. You want to resolve your own stuff. So the money thing isn't as much of an issue with you guys, but sometimes, as I said, stuff just happens. So why did it happen? Doesn't matter why it happened. But you want to know these sort of things. Oh yeah, power surge. Well, that says, you know, you got booted out of the system. That explains maybe what to do. Moved a new server, change this, installed a new workstation. Oh, installed a new workstation. Guess what? It's probably a workstation problem. So you ask yourself, what changed in your whole environment just before this started happening? So here's our agenda today in summary. We're going to talk about, at least, deleting stranded users. What's a stranded user? A stranded user is somebody that it thinks it's in GP, but it's not in GP. How do you get rid of those? Running reconciles. Sometimes you may notice that it seems like in one part of the system you got these numbers, but in another part of the system you have these numbers or these totals. They're not reconciled. A reconcile is a really quick, fast, easy way of getting these things in sync. Clearing what we call stuck batches. It's not fancy, but that kind of describes the problem. Let me ask you, have any of you ever had a stuck batch? Okay, nodding heads. This is, I would say, the most common problem that we get, and it involves sometimes the use of one of the SQL tools, the SQL Management Studio. Okay, if you're able to do that yourself, you're going to save yourself some money and you'll feel empowered and all this stuff. So we'll spend a little bit of time with that. Unknown dictionary error upon login. Similarly, a dictionary not loaded error. Now this you may or may not have seen. Rebuilding the PM or RM key file. PM Payables Management, RM Receivables Management. That is actually a file that ties together a lot of other files, and I'll show you the message that comes up. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to replicate that, but I'll show you on the screen what the message is. It's a pretty simple fix. Can't get into Management Reporter. One of the things is, it's like it just says, we can't get in. What's the deal? Some common things for correcting this. Rebuilding the reports dictionary. When something seems so weird and you just can't figure out why this is happening, but if it doesn't make any sense and you've tried everything else, rebuild the reports dictionary. Weird, strange things can have nothing to do with reports because you got a corrupted reports dictionary. And some of you guys will go through 15 years of GP and never get reports dictionary corrupted. And others will get 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year. I'll show you how to rebuild it. It's a pretty simple procedure, and that will resolve a number of unrelated, seemingly unconnected things. Okay, so let's talk about deleting stranded users, a very common thing. So the purpose here that I'm talking about is to delete other GP users in the system, not yourself. Why? Because for most of you guys on the later versions, if you get yourself stranded, when you first log in and you choose your company again, it will say, hey, there's a user in the system. Would you like to look at this? And your proper response is yes. And it shows your stranded user, and you delete yourself, and then problem resolved. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody else. Somebody else is in the system, okay? And maybe it's even impeding your ability to take up users. Most of you guys know that you've only bought a certain amount of users. Those are called concurrent users. That means that you can only have so many people in at one time. Well, those stranded users are taking up a license. And it can come to a point where you're trying to log in and they're all taken up because you got stranded users. You know that not everyone's working on it. So it's important to get other people out of the system. And this is what we're going to talk about. In GP, this is how this is where you can access what's called user activity. I'll go show you in a second. It's in Dynamics GP. It's under Tools, under Utilities, under System, and it is called User Activity. You do not have to be logged in as SA. You do, of course, have to have access to that particular screen. So some people will not have access. But almost everything I'm going to show you right here, you do not, if you have access to everything in GP, you do not need to be SA to do this within GP. Okay, so now I'm going to flip to GP and show you where. So what I did was, now there are two ways. I'm showing you I was telling you the classic way. Dynamics GP off the toolbar. Tools. Utilities. System. User activity. Path is the same for everything past version 9, I think. The other way, my more favored way, it's on the administration page. I love the administration page because you can see the whole module here. So there's utilities right here. And right here is user activity. Okay, now, the thing you will need that you didn't see right here, you will need a system password. You will need to have access. There is something in GP called the system password, which I've removed off of mine, but you guys will need to have that in order to bring up this kind of system screen. I'm presuming also that you know what that is. But if you don't, ask your IT person. Somebody's got to know what it is. And when you pop that in, you're going to see a list of everybody there. Now, in my case, I only see DynSA. Okay, I'm the only one in. That's my user right now, DynSA. Okay, you would see a list of everybody using GP at one time, at that moment, even if they were stranded. How would you know that they might be stranded? This date right here, instead of today's date, might be several days ago. This might have happened many days ago. Might have. When I get in and do support, I kind of look. Oh, there's some from months ago. I just go and delete it. Just get rid of the garbage. So all you do is highlight this, click delete. It says here I can't remove myself from GP. That's a good thing. But you would be removing the other user. That actually also means live users. So in case you don't want to delete someone that's actually doing something important, but your key is prior dates. Prior dates mean they're probably stranded. They're probably not using it. So you just hit delete, gone. Okay. Now that's the GP way. And in general, if you can do it in GP, if you can do support in GP, do it. Sometimes we consultants get we like using our tools, and we can do so much and type these commands and get rid of data and change data, but that's inherently a problem. So if you can do it in GP, because then it's going to hit all the tables, everything that it needs to hit. But let's just say that for whatever reason, let's see where I am in my little thing here. Yes, in SQL Management Studio, that's where we're going to go. Say you can't do it in GP for whatever reason. You can execute the following script against the Dynamics database. Now this was the snapshot that I showed you to do it in GP. There's a screen. Okay. It's delete activity where user ID equals whatever the ID is, the user that you want. Okay. We're going to go and do this, okay, so you can actually see it here. Now, usually, SQL Management Studio is only on the server. So your first thing is, got to get to the server. For what I'm saying, you need to have some IT tools to do this. Or you need to work in tandem with your IT people who might not be likely to give you access to this sort of thing. Okay, they might be watching over your shoulder. They might actually be doing it, but you can tell them what it is you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to right now give you the basics of some SQL language that would help you out here. Okay, so that statement, as I said, is you're going to there's three kinds of statements that are of importance to you guys. I think I've got this written down here. Okay, before we do this, we are going to make a backup because you are touching the data. So I'm going to show you how to make a backup. Okay, let's get right into making a backup. Let's just It's just so important. Okay. There are three kinds of statements, one of which doesn't do anything. A select statement just shows you data. But the other two, the most powerful ones, update, that changes data. We're going to do that in a second. And then we're going to do delete, maybe. That's really powerful, and as you might imagine, really dangerous. So before you do anything with this tool, the first thing you should do is make a backup of the database. Here's how. Okay, when you log in, you're going to see this thing on the left called an Object Explorer. And it will have your SQL Server on top, and right below it, it will have your databases. And if you open up the databases, in other words, click the plus next to it, you will see a list of your companies, your GP companies. They should be generally there and capitalized. So if you have one company, it will be, and it's 5 characters or less, hopefully they'll make sense. If you have many companies that you switch back and forth, you will have to, of course, know which company. Well, in this case, this particular instance, this isn't company specific, but you will want to back up the company or the database that you're about to change. If you got 25 of them, don't back up 25, just change the one you're going to do. In this case, the database is the Dynamics database. Everything that's in the system, everything that says system on, every system thing, if you tool system setup, is stored in the Dynamics database and crosses across companies. That's the one we're going to back up right here. Here's how to back up any database. You right-click on the database. You click on Tasks. And you click on Backup. Okay, and then you will say, well, what's the name of the file? What's the file I want to create when I do this? And so really what probably is going to happen is it's going to be last night's backup right there. Okay? If you've got a SQL maintenance plan, it's got the latest backup from the night before. They have a nice long string. It'll say 2014, 09, 1, what's today? The day 16th, 09, 15, 10 o'clock, whatever the time is, .bak. You're going to remove that. Don't worry, it's not actually deleting things. You're just removing it, and you're adding your own file. So you click Add. And then this is where the default is where it's going to back up. Probably will be to a backup folder. If it's not, you browse to where you want to create this file. I'm going to click this little 3-button ellipsis button. And look at that. There, I've made a couple of backups here. I'm going to call this Dynamics, because that's the name of my database, .bak. BAK is kind of important because it's going to help to find that if you ever need to restore it. Click OK. Click OK. Click OK. And right over here on the left, it's executing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. If you got a big company database, this could take you a couple minutes, but it shouldn't take you more than that, or it shouldn't take your IT people more than that. The backup of database Dynamics completed successfully. You can do this while others are in the system. You don't need to kick everybody out. However, if it's your company, you got to at least tell them to stop working, because guess what? If they're posting and doing other stuff, that's not going to be in the backup. I would say as a general policy, if you're going to do this, get everybody out. I learned really early in my consulting career that as long as you make a backup, you can boldly go forth and do anything. Because the worst that you could do is entirely screw up the data. Delete star.star. Whoops, I have no more data. No problem, because you have a backup. And if need be, you could just restore that backup from a few minutes ago, and you're right back to where you started.
Is it really that easy?
It is really that easy. I just did it. Oh, to restore the backup? Oh, no, that's incredibly hard. To restore, you do now. Restore, you do have to have everybody out of the system. Okay, and so all you do to restore is right-click again, click Tasks, click Restore. etc. And there are a couple more things which I'm not going to go through right now since that's not supporting related per se. It's the backing up that's important. The restore though works pretty easily. Moral of the story, if you've got backed up data, you can go ahead and do anything. So we got our backup. We want to see what the users are here. So let's go back here, make a backup. I think this describes everything that I just did. Right click on database, backup, click add button, click OK 3 times, like Dorothy with her diamond shoes, the ruby shoes. And these are pictures. Okay, yes. So now, here is how you see things in management or in the SQL Management Studio. First of all, you have to pick the database up here. I want to pick dynamics. Remember I said that's where this stuff is located. And I'm going to type the command select asterisk, we call that star, from, and then you name what your file is. This file is called the activity file. And depending on what version of this Management Studio you have, it'll start popping up the actual name. That'll even help you. Select statements are never a problem. In fact, we use them just to see what's in there, what's in the system. And oh, there, it popped up, activity. This is a listing of all my tables. So to actually run any statement, you type it in, you pick your database, and then you click this execute button. And you will see a list of everything that's in there. This correlates to what we just saw in GP. We saw that there's one record and one record only. Okay? In your situation, you're going to see some user that shouldn't be in there. So you're going to want to get rid of this. And here's what you're going to type. You're going to replace the select star from, and you're going to say delete. Delete is a very, very dangerous thing, especially when you say delete the whole table. Okay, this would delete all the users. Not a big deal in my case. In your case, if you got 15 people in there, it's going to get rid of all 15. Not a good thing. So you need to define this more and say where, to use the where command. I only want to run this. I only want to select, I only want to update, I only want to delete where a certain condition is held. So I'm going to go back to select star from. Now remember, you guys would have a lot of users in here. Those users are under the user ID field, okay, and you'd recognize them. So you would want to just find your bad boy, your stranded user, by using a where command, W-H-E-R-E. Where, and then you tell your field user ID, and again it's prompting me. I can actually go down and just select it and hit enter, equals, and you must put in a single quote, not a double quote, a single quote. You know you're on the right path because it starts outlining it in red. And put your name in. You got it. Whoops, you got to spell it. And what I always do is I always execute that statement, just that one statement, to make sure that your one and only user. You had 15 here. Now you're only seeing your one. Just as a matter of even though I got that backup, I don't have to go restore backup. Yeah, I kick it out. So I want to make sure I do this right. So I want to hone it down to the one and only record that I want to get rid of. Maybe you got two users, and maybe one of them is really good. One is one because this will have every user in every company. So maybe user Bob is in one company, okay, but he's stranded in another company. So he's in one company correctly, he's in another company incorrectly. If you said delete where user is this, that's not going to do it either because it's going to delete both records. So here's the final way to get a unique record, to make sure you're only talking about that line. If you go to the last column will be Dex row ID. That is a unique record. So you want to make sure you grab one and only record. You say, instead of user ID equals, Dex row ID equals, and you do not put a quote in. You just put the line number. Does the line mean anything? No. I mean, it does, but you don't need to. It's not important to you. Execute that, and you will know, you will get the one and only unique line to get rid of. So once you've honed it to whatever method you use to get to the one line, now you come in and say, you change the select star from to delete. And you would execute this. I'm not going to, because then it removes me currently in the system from the system. So those are basics on SQL Management Studio. Running reconciles. GP 101. You post data. You post transactions. You post journal entries. You post payables invoices. You post checks. You post sales invoices individually. And that's contained in certain records. You know, you look up a transaction by customer, it'll show you all the little transactions. It'll also show you a customer summary in another place. So sometimes you look and go, wow, I see those 3 transactions and they're supposed to add up to this, but I look in the summary and it doesn't add up to this. What's the deal? It got, there's a technical term for this. It's called it got out of whack. Okay, so the reconcile, and this is something you can do, and there is no, absolutely zero harm to do. There's no, you don't need to back up, you don't need to do anything. It just matches the summary records. It changes the summary records. So whenever you see a summary that you even think might not be accurate, it'll match the summary records to equal the total of the transaction detail. You can do this in general ledger, you can do this in accounts payable, you can do this in accounts receivable. In accounts payables, or in this accounts receivable. So we'll actually go through and do this. Okay. In accounts receivable, that will be under sales. In all cases, it's under utilities. So I'm going to take my little utilities here, and I'm just going to drag this out and maximize it so I can see the nice whole picture here. And there's reconcile right at the beginning. Okay, in receivables, there are 2 things that there are 2 places you want to reconcile. One, the current customer, you can reconcile any of these, but to resolve the situation I'm talking about, do the first 2, current customer information and outstanding document amounts. You could do all customers, not a bad idea. If you have 30,000 customers, and 3 million records, that could take a while. You would want to do that. You would want to do that at night after everyone's out. Not because, you know, just because it takes a while. You don't want someone posting something to the customer you're doing this with. But if you suspect one customer is wrong, and for purposes of time, I'm going to include just one, you click From. And you look up your customer and choose your customer. I'm going to pick the one we use most. Aaron Fit Electrical, and I'll do from and to, the same person. The date, just take today's date. Everything else you keep the same. And you click Process, which here will only take a minute. You do not want to print this to the printer, especially if you're doing all things, unless of course you don't like paper and you don't value money and and so forth, because it will take up hundreds or thousands of pages, okay, if you're doing everybody. So what will happen, we'll do it to the screen. You want to do it to the screen, and frankly, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does. If you see this, you are probably in balance. This didn't solve any reconcile problem. If you weren't, it would look something like this. It would show before reconcile and after reconcile, and it would show different numbers. So here, before, the current period was this amount. The after you ran reconcile was this amount. And the 180 and over, the total balance was okay, but it it adjusted the aging periods for this. So this would have been maybe a case where we looked up in the aging and it was one thing on the screen and then the detail was another. But there's no, there's no downside. We ran a reconcile, it didn't change anything, but that's okay. This is not a terribly bad idea to do this for everybody every so often, although it just takes time. So that you'll know though if something was changed because you got this result. Okay, we got nothing here. Click reconcile. Click outstanding document amounts. We'll pick the same customer. And by the way, the important thing here is that the reconcile button is marked. That defaults to being marked, but that's the guy that's going to do your job for you. Click process, go to the screen. Nothing there either. So that guy was reconciled. Okay? Strictly a GP thing. And again, the purpose is to get the summary records in balance with the detail records. Clearing stuck batches. This one is the most common GP situation that we face. So first, you try to determine what has or hasn't happened. This basically involves looking at the situation, has it or hasn't it posted? Because this determines what to do with the batch once you free it. It somehow got stuck. Maybe a power surge. Maybe it didn't, maybe there's something wrong like the debits didn't equal the credits or there was an account number missing or something like that. And that's why it didn't post. But this is very important. This determines what you're going to do with the batch once you free it up. The first thing you're going to try, this is a GP thing, is batch recovery. And I think I have some screenshots of this because I don't have anything in batch recovery. If batch recovery doesn't work, you may have to do this via a SQL query. That's the thing we were in, SQL Query Manager. But first, let's look at batch recovery. That's your first thing. That's your easiest thing to look at. Is it in batch recovery? That's stuck batch and batch recovery. Here's where batch recovery is. It's on the administration page. It's under the routine section. So it's got its own place, batch recovery. This will have everything that didn't make it through entirely through the system. And it will have some status posting interrupted or blah, blah, blah. If it's anything in there, there's only one thing to do. And there might be more than one thing in there. You just mark it. There'll be a little place to mark it, and you will say continue. Continue will send it back to its original place. Now, it'll actually do one of two things. In most cases, it will send it back to its original place. We can look at it. It's now available. It will either send it back to the start, do not pass code, do not collect 200, or it will actually finish the job off. If it was somehow, say you had a power surge and it was 99% done, it's probably actually already done with everything but maybe printing a report. It'll just send it through. It's all posted. You verify that it's posted. Job done. That's the easy, lucky way. Lucky situation. So that's something that's your first step. Look and see if it's there, click continue. It will tell you the kind of batch it is. Is it a general ledger batch? Is it a cash receipts? It'll say the origin, cash receipts, or general ledger entry, or accounts payable transaction. So that's important to know, because if it goes back to start, you got to know what kind of batch it was. Okay. That's the first step. You're lucky to batch recovery, gets the batch unstuck. But most probably, the batch is stuck for another reason. You've got to use you got to use the SQL Management Studio to get it unstuck. So, running simple SQL statements. We've gone through this already with the activity. Select star from. Star means everything, by the way. So when you say select star from, this looks at all the data that's in a particular table. For example, the statement we are about to run, select star from SY00500. Why is it that? Well, that is the table. Now the real power, update. This changes the data. Update SY00500, change a field to something else. Okay, and we'll talk more about this. Whenever you do an update and execute the query, that's going to change something. And then lastly, and most dangerously, the delete. We did a delete. We deleted one user where user ID, where dexro ID equals that. And for obvious reasons, that is one to handle with care. Okay, when you execute any of these statements, you have to pick the company or the database you're running it against. That's that little thing in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, so we're going to, instead of looking at the screen, we're actually going to go do it. Okay, in SQL Management Studio, I'm going to say new query. New query just clears the whole thing out here. Now, unlike the other statement, which was on the dynamics, because it's system-wide, this has to do with the company. You have a stuck batch in a particular company. Which company is it? Which database? In our world here, this is the world online. All of these situations are in our company called the World Online, also known as Fabricam. You all have it at sample data. The important thing is you pick from here. You're going to drop down the list and pick the company that you want to run it against. If you pick the wrong company, if you pick some other non-GP database, it'll just say, hey, we don't recognize that. The problem is when you run something against the wrong company, it's a valid company, you might get results that are not intended. Let's just put it that way. So I'm going to type in select star from SY00500. Case, it's not case sensitive. And if I click execute, I get all of this stuff. Now there are two very important columns in this which have to do with stuck batches. MKD TOPST, better known as marked to post. If it's somehow marked to post, this is not going to be a 0, it's going to be a 1. The second column that's really important is batch status, which is somewhere way over somewhere. I don't know. So it doesn't matter because we're going to modify this. We're going to say we want to select BCHSTTUS. Write that down, comma, star. So on everything, but first, in the first column, we want to see the batch status. Okay, now we have, by the way, right here, we have 46 rows of stuff. This includes real stuff that's in process, batches of people created that they haven't posted yet. This is a batch status screen, okay, or table, I should say. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that's in normal process. So what we want to do is we want to say where this doesn't equal 0. 0 is available. 0 is good. Your goal is going to be to make these things 0. Let's alter our query here to look at only the guys that aren't 0. In other words, we want to hone in on what the bad batch is. So we're going to append to this, we're going to append a greater than and a less than. That's the non-equal symbol, not equal 0. And execute that. Well, oh, I'm sorry. Forgot one more word. Where batch status is not equal 0. And see, notice, if I type it wrong, I got incorrect syntax. Okay? But no problem. Ah, okay. Now you would already know this. Someone's told you, hey, the petty cash batch is stuck. You already probably know what's stuck, so you can see it right there. This is your confirmation that, oh yeah, what is batch? What is 3? 3 is marked. What's marked? Doesn't really matter. In this case, it's not 0. It's stuck somewhere. Okay. Our goal here is to change those to be 0. This is where you got to start asking yourself some questions. What kind of batch is it? Because maybe the batch status is in status 110. Checks are printing. Okay? If checks are printing, maybe they just need to complete the job. Okay? Maybe it's a check batch. Okay? That you've already got the checks printed, so you don't want to reprint them. Remember, changing it back to 0 starts it over again. Okay? Well, you have already printed out the checks. If it's a 110 checks printing or 13 remittance processing, I don't have any here, so I can't really show you this, but I will show you where to go if that's the case. If it's a 110, remember these are check batches. You're going to go to purchasing. You're going to go to, or believe it or not, post checks. If that doesn't make sense, let me kind of tell you the concept. If you look, for those of you in accounts payable, this will be familiar. First of all, you select checks for payment. Then you may edit a check that's selected, but then you're going to print checks, and automatically once you print checks, it's going to go to post checks. If there's a remittance involved, why would there be a remittance? Because there's more than 12 invoices that's paying, so it automatically is going to try to print out or allow you the option of printing out a piece of paper with all the remittances. It will go to process remittance. So if you're in the check printing, basically what you do is kind of work backward. You go to post checks. You do a lookup. If you see your batch there, you just select that batch and finish the job. Remember, why did this get stuck? Maybe it got stuck because it was some sort of power surge or for whatever reason. Somebody kicked the plug out of a computer or whatever. So it just needs to, this might be a case where it just needs to finish the process. This is why it pays to ask questions, so you can see where it should be at. You find your batch here, you select your batch, there's no batch to select, and then you would select your batch and process the posting. If it was in remittance processing, you would click process remittance, you would look up, you would see your batch, and you would just mark post and finish the process. So sometimes you do not have to come back and change something. Remember that SQL Management Studio is a last resort thing. You can't free it up in GP. Okay? Well, these guys have statuses of 3. They mean they're marked. What's with that? Don't know. We're going to change it. We're going to change it back to 0. Okay. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to just do this. I'm going to hit return a couple times. I'm going to go back up to the top. I'm going to type in update query. Update SY00500. On the second line, we're going to say what we're going to change. Set, that set BCH STTUS. We're going to change the batch status equal to 0. Now, if I do that, I'm going to do it for both these records. In my case, right here, that's probably okay. With you guys, you might want to hone more on one particular batch at a time. And maybe hopefully there'll only be one that's stuck, but there may be several that are stuck. And you might want to hone them and do them individually. So I would say I want to do this individually. Let's say I just want to look at that guy right there. There's my batch right there, batch number. And you probably already know this from someone said, hey, my petty batch is stuck. And you go and you look and you go, yeah, it's not in batch recovery. Sometimes you can even see it somewhere, but it says you can't access it. So that's why you're changing this to 0. So I'm going to say set batch status equal to 0 where batch num, and I can go down and select it, equals, this is just a word, so you have to put it in a single quote, P-E-T-T-Y. Batch number is generally, but not always unique. If you doubt that, then what you do is go back over here and say, okay, that's Dex row ID of 28. But this will 99% of the time be unique. Okay? Especially if you adhere to our naming convention, we use the date in your initials, so they tend to have individual guys here. Okay? I can highlight just this one thing. And that's a good thing to do where you start typing out a bunch of stuff. You don't want to necessarily do all of it. I wouldn't have a problem doing this here. But if you just want to execute what you highlight, just click that and click execute. One row affected. One row is good. What you don't want to see is 5,432 rows affected. That's probably, that's where your calls really say, we got to restore. Once you have changed, once you have deleted data, especially once you've deleted data, you cannot go back. Okay, so now if I do select batch status from 500 where batch status is not equal 0, I get the other record only. Okay, so I've freed up the petty batch. So you got to know, and again, if you worked with your person, you go, oh yeah, both of those were RM cat, batch source. That tells you what kind of batch. Okay, so I know that was a cash receipts batch and RM, receivables management. So now I can go into GP and find that batch. Remember, it's called petty. Go into GP, go into sales. This is under transactions. And it was under cash receipts, but this is a receivables batch. So I want to look up the batch. And if I do a lookup right here, there's petty along with a lot of other stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean we're out of the water yet. We actually have to finish the job. There might have been a reason why, there was a reason why this got stopped. And maybe it was because of power, but maybe it was because of something with the batch itself, i.e. it didn't balance. There was something about it that forced it to not post. Okay, so we're going to print an edit list to see, is there a problem with that batch? You're going to click your printer icon. Going to go to the screen. This batch has 2 pages of stuff. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm going and looking for something that's not right. Might be a missing account here, okay? Might be a closed period. I'm looking for errors. I'm looking for verbiage. The period's closed. Account number doesn't exist. Something that made it hold up. I don't see anything. You don't see anything? Let her rip. Post. Go to the screen again. Cash posting journal. Well, that's good. And if you look, you see it's identical to the edit list. I don't see any errors here. But what's the key? Whenever you post a batch, always look up the batch ID. It should be gone. Okay? No news is good news. Gone is good. That petty is gone. Okay? That means it posted. Problem resolved. Yeah, this is the other part. One of the columns, as I said, was batch status, BCS STTUS. The other is called mark to post. If it's got a mark to post, meaning if you go do a lookup, there's a little check mark saying, hey, somebody's posting it right now. And maybe it's stuck because of that. So the other thing, and you could do this, you could combine this. You could look at both of these, set batch status, comma, MKVTO mark to post, comma. Oops, I don't want that out. Don't want it there. Actually, I'm okay having it there, but that's what I want to fully explore this. I want to look at both of these. I'm going to look at everything, and I'm going to see mark to post for all the batches. I can scroll down. in this mark to post, there's nobody here. There's nobody that's not 0. You would have somebody with a 1. So you're going to do the same thing. You would say set mark to post equals 0, where batch number equals blah, blah, blah. And it would take the check mark off. Batch status is the more common, but mark to post is also a reason why a batch would get stuck. Those are the 2 fields that hold the batch up from posting. What I could do is I could say I want to now clear the other guy out, BCH, STT. Yeah, I want you to make it available. I want you to get it unstuck. You're going to set, we know the batch status is 3 for this one batch. So I want you to set it to 0, set batch status. You just double click it. And then where batch number is not equal to petty, but equal to Uptown Trust, because that's our bad batch there. Okay? Highlight the whole thing. Actually, you got to highlight the update on line 2. And click execute. One row effect. One row is good. Now if you run that that select statement, where one of the, well actually that doesn't, the batch status, yeah, you could run that. We should have nobody there. Say all equals 0. Good. There are no stuck batches. Okay, now, and you're going to click on the receivables batches again, because that also was a cash receipts batch. Do a lookup, pick your Uptown Trust, just click the select button there. Okay. And click print to print a posting journal. Let's see if there's a problem with that. Okay, he kind of looks similar. I'm not seeing any problems here so far. One bad, it's the opposite of Michael Jackson. One bad apple can spoil the whole bunch, girl. If you get one bad guy here, he can prevent that batch from posting. Not necessarily. Generally, it will post what it can and leave back what it can. But I have seen where one bad entry puts it into stuck status. So that's what you're looking for. One possible problem. I don't see anything there. I don't see any problems there. So click post. Okay, we go down. Looks like there's no errors still. Close that guy. And lastly, do a lookup on the batch ID. Uptown Trust or whatever should be gone. It is probably gone.
I have a cash management batch stock, although it's all the way posted.
Ah, good point. That can happen. For whatever reason, it got pushed back and it actually posted. So you got to do some research. It's like, whoa, that's posted. Depending on the batch. You got to get rid of it now because you don't want to post it twice. Okay? Now, if it's a payables batch, say it's an invoice batch, do something easy. Set it to 0. That batch is just sitting right there. You just go into payables. You know, you go to batches here in payables, and you see your batch now. You look it up, and you hit delete. Get rid of it. Okay, you got a bank transaction entry. Okay, bank transaction entries don't have a batch. So the minute you do your thing, you could well post it. This is where you want to do something different with the SY0500. You want to run a delete statement. So you're going to want to run, you just want to get rid of all vestiges of it. So that is actually select star from SY00500, and you want to delete something about that. There was a batch or a bank transaction entry. I don't know that we have one here. Probably not. These are my batch sources here. But there can be cases where you just gotta get rid of them. You just want to get them out of the system. Let's just say, since I'm at the test company, and oh, look at this. Look at that weird thing. There's something where the batch number is nothing. Well, I want to get rid of that just as a matter of principle. Good housekeeping, okay? So I'm going to run a statement, and you would do this on this bank transaction thing. You would say, first of all, I'm going to hone this here. I'm going to say where, I could do it one of two ways. Batch number equals 0, but I'm going to actually do what I preached to you guys. Line 42, the Dex row ID is 45. So I'm going to select it first, where Dex row ID equals 45. And I'm going to execute that one statement. I should just have my bad boy there. I do. And then I can just slip in. I can replace my select star from with the word delete. Delete that. There's a shadow table there, kind of, which is why I gave two things, 0 row, 1 row. Kind of. So now if I run it, I would see that guy's gone. He wouldn't bother you anymore. But you can see this is something where what you do kind of depends on the circumstance. That's why, and again, if you're thinking about deleting or even updating, you might want to take a little time after work and back up the data, make sure, because there's nothing worse than, everyone's kind of doing their thing and it's like, uh-oh, now I got to restore, pressure's on, people out, if you do it a little bit, if you do it after work, take a step back, analyze what you're doing, and pull the trigger. Because as I said, once you execute it, it's done deal. Okay, moving right along. Unknown dictionary error. This will happen upon login to GP. That'll be the first thing that comes up before the screen even comes up. It's usually, though not always, off for one workstation. And here's the reason. The user doesn't have permissions, but more importantly, they lost access to the GP server. Now, here's why. When you log in, you're running the program, chances are, on your local machine. But you're trying to access reports that are located on the network, most probably. If you're like every install that we've ever done, we put your reports in a common place on the dictionary. If all of a sudden you can't see the reports anymore, that's a network thing. You might have had a map drive, a drive G or something like that. If you have that, and here's how you can easily tell. You can just go into Windows Explorer. You're going to have to know where the server is. But if you can't see that server, that's your problem. It's a login issue. It's a network issue. And that's when, if you're an IT guy, you probably know, oh yeah, I've got to do this, I got to remap this, blah, blah, blah. Or if you're not an IT guy, I use the guy, man or woman, then get with your IT guy and say, hey, we can't see this. So if all you do is go out here, you bring up Windows Explorer, you click on Network, and you should be able to see your server. If you can't see your server, it's going to go through and pop up all the servers, and you won't be able to see your server from that workstation. That's the problem. Get access to that server, the person will get into GP. Dictionary not loaded error. When we see this, it's somebody's trying to access a GP window, like the employee maintenance window, maybe, like the some of the cash management stuff, sometimes the sales transaction entry. It'll give a message, it'll say cannot access this form because the dictionary containing it is not loaded, which sounds. What that means is, and usually what we find out when we start asking, people go, yeah, it's a new workstation. We just installed GP on a new workstation. That usually means then that a third-party program that uses that window hasn't been loaded. There are two reasons. One is that first one. It's not loaded. Or two, the GP user doesn't have access to that window or modified window. So here's the resolutions. To symptom 1, it's a new work, and you know, because oh yeah, they just installed this. It's a new workstation, or they reinstalled GP. Check a good workstation to see what's loaded. Find the missing product and load it. Or the easy way, in a way, copy the whole folder from a good workstation over to the bad workstation. and try it again. Because the issue is there's something that's not loaded. Now, if you wanted to drill down further on that, there is a file. The GP product is loaded on the C drive, as I said. It's usually under Program Files, x86. It's usually under Dynamics GP, or Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013. There is a file called the dynamics.set file, dynamics set. If you open that, right-click and open with Notepad or something, this is going to show, this has a list of products, everything that got installed. And there's lots of them, and you guys don't even know aware that you're using them. You're probably not even using them. Some of them, like Microsoft Dynamics, this has Integration Manager, Fixed Assets, Human Resources, Field Service, blah, blah, blah. Has a list of all the products. You compare the bad workstation with a good workstation, and you will find the good workstation has one of the products that the bad workstation doesn't have, and that's the reason why you're getting that message. And so then the question is, okay, well, what file is that? How do I install that? It has to do with a GP install. I'm not going to get into that. All right, the other possible reason is that for some reason it's not marked. That window isn't marked in this following screen, alternate modified forms and reports. Here's where that folder is located, and you can do this within GP. Okay, that's on the administration page. It's under setup. It's right here, the alternate and modified forms and reports. Now, chances are you will have one and only one ID called default user. The purpose of this whole file is anytime you have a modified report, and why would you have a modified report? Because somebody wanted to change the report and add fields onto it that don't normally appear. So then you have to tell the users to use that modified report. So if I come in here in the Microsoft GP, and I have the type of reports, and I have it'll hourglass for a second, and it will show every report that is modified. And if I click on it, now this one's saying I'm using the regular one. That's bad. I should be using the modified one. And this one should be using the modified one, etc. Okay? Now, the problem is neither one of those are marked. I've seen this happen many times before. Why did it happen? Who knows? But they get unmarked. Neither one is marked. That would be a reason why the person couldn't get in on a particular report or a particular window. If I did Windows, I get the same possible thing. It would show me, in this case, it's going to show me a lot. It's going to show me all the windows in GP. Somebody says, hey, I can't see this. Should, but let's just do this, purchasing. Person saying, I try to do the payables transaction entry screen, I get that error message. You come in here, payables transaction entry, nothing's marked. You just mark the appropriate one, click Save, problem resolved. And here's a screenshot here. This is a one where, see right here, employee maintenance didn't have anything marked. So this you would mark Microsoft Dynamics GP. Warning, I've seen situations like that where none of them are marked. So you have to come into every one and mark something. It can be a little time consuming. Rebuilding the PM or RM key file. You will get this error message, and this is why we sometimes ask, hey, capture a screenshot of the message. I can look at that in about 1.2 nanoseconds, know what that is. I don't even need to read it. I can just see, oh yeah, primary key constraint, PK. Enough said. But it will say, cannot insert duplicate key. That's my trigger. And that means that there is a file that ties together the other transaction files. It's kind of linking all the payables files together or all the receivables files. That needs to be rebuilt. Here's how. You got to go into SQL Management Studio. The file is PM00400. The accounts receivable files RM00401. So you're going to delete the file in SQL Management Studio. And then in GP, you're going to rebuild it. So I have a little screenshot here. You are going to get everybody out of the, if you're doing this during the day, you're going to get everybody out of the system. You just don't want anybody doing anything. Even though technically they only have to be out of payables or out of receivables, you just want them out. New query. And again, being the cautious guy that I am, even though I know what that is, I'm going to run a select statement first. Select star from PM 00400. This means actually more to me than it does to you, but I'm seeing, first of all, this table can be huge. It can be several tens of thousands of records. What table is this? This is called the payables key file, the PM key file, or the RM, receivables management key file. It's an internal file that links together. You can't see it in GP, okay? But it got deleted. Yeah, but it's going to get rebuilt. That's the thing, okay? And since we've just made a backup, we know we can do this, okay? So even though I just made a backup, I run it, I go, yeah, that kind of looks good. Not dissuaded by it. In fact, if I only saw 2 records, I'd say, whoa, did I get the right file? But I got the right file, I just do delete. In fact, while I'm at it, I normally don't see it at the same time, but I'm going to do select star from RM. I love this feature too because it tells me I've got a right table here, and it kind of, I like to copy, or just, you know, copy and paste, not type in stuff where I have to. If I do that, got 1,375 rows here, it's the same looking stuff. I'm going to delete them both at one time. Do that, make sure the company is the right company, the database. All right, so now now you get into it. So you come in, and here's what you do. You click Microsoft Dynamics GP, Maintenance, and Check Links. The series for payables or purchasing, the 2 files are, 1, the payables history logical file. Find it, insert it. 2, the payables transaction logical file. Click it, insert it. Normally it's only going to be one or the other, but since they're running together, we're doing this at one time. I'm going to also find the sales. On the sales side, it's the receivable transaction history file and the receivables open transaction files. And again, I got 11,000 records here. You may have 30 million records. Don't be dissuaded. You're just rebuilding something that you've just deleted. It's really not a big deal as long as you do it. Click OK. And the most important thing here is make sure the error log goes to the screen, because it will be hundreds or thousands of pages. This, even if you have a lot of records, won't take more than a few minutes to do. So it created, for my little test database, is 55 pages of stuff. You don't want to print that, and you don't even need to look at it. It just says it's recreated all these records. Yeah, and remember what we do first, we back up, always back up. Check links, those are the files in purchasing, which, same thing for, okay. Can't access management reporting. You would get a message that looks like this. Can't connect to the management reporter server. Management reporter, it's a new FRX. It's great. It looks better. It works just like FRX, but it looks 21st century. It's cool, but one of the problems is you get an error message. It's like, what does that mean? The error messages aren't extremely enlightening. Okay, so what you want to do when you get that message, you want to click yes. In fact, you want to go for. It'll say, do you want to specify a different server address? You click yes. only because you want this next one right here. This will tell you, whoops, this will tell you where it is. You don't care about that necessarily. You just want to click Test Connection, because Test Connection is going to tell you a couple of meaningful things. See, failure is an option. It's just what we don't like. Okay, one, the user doesn't have permissions. And it would say when you test it, oh, the user doesn't have permissions. Permissions is a great word for you as a troubleshooter or me as a consultant, because it means security. It means you know where to look. That user doesn't have access to Management Reporter. Or version mismatch. That's also a very enlightening one. That means that what was loaded on the workstation, and again, when we hear, oh yeah, we just set up a new workstation, and we do this, we have version mismatch, that means that somebody installed the wrong version of Management Reporter. Simple enough. Or service is not running. That would be another thing that would tell. Each of these have different solutions. If it's a user thing, a permissions thing, assign security to user. Here's how. Let's see if it's number 2, install the correct version. Number 3, restart the Management Reporter services. I am going to show you how to do this. Let's see. I don't have Management Reporter loaded on my workstation, so I went to the server where it is. I would, to assign, now Management Reporter is its own beast, meaning you not only have to have a GP login, but you have to have a network login to use Management Reporter. It's the most restrictive of all the products. So you want to launch, as an administrator, you want to launch Report Designer. And then you want to go to the security page, and you will see all the network users who are allowed to use Management Reporter. You click on New, and you assign the new person. How? You click Search. Now this isn't a GP user. This is a network user. They need to be both a network and a GP user. I'm going to hit M for Mainer. I don't even know if I'm in there. Check name. So you type in the login name as far as you know it. Oh, look, Matt Mason's even in there. Look at that, man. I'm going to pick me. So you pick the user. You click OK. Then you assign that user what level of access you want. There are 4 levels of access. From the least on up, viewer means they can just run reports other people have done. You don't want that. You want them to be at least a generator. A generator can run reports. A designer can create reports. An administrator can do just what we're doing here, give access to other users. Okay? So I'm on all rights. I'm going to be a user, an administrator, I mean. If you're not an administrator, you got to go into company access, and you got to mark the companies, the GP databases you want them to be able to access. So you would see all the companies, and you would mark the companies. Administrator by default will have access to all the companies. Click OK, problem resolved. Tell them to log in, voila, that's the issue. If it's a version mismatch, find the right version and install that on the workstation. Enough said. If it is it might say the process isn't running. If the process isn't running, here's your clue on the process. There are 2 processes that Management Reporter uses. If the thing here is, if they can't run it, nobody can run it. Okay? It'll say restart the processes. Here's how. You go again, this is on the server. This one you got to go on the server. Click Start. Click All Programs. Microsoft Dynamics. Management Reporter 2012. Configuration Console. If this is a problem, one of these or both of these will have red arrows. They will be stopped. You need to start them. And that will resolve your problem. And it just takes a second or 2. I did restart, it stopped it, started it, and it is now still starting. Assign security. We just went through this. Start services. We just went through that. So the conclusions here, if you back up first, you can do anything. Or as my grandmother always said, you can never say too much. I don't think she was talking about computers, data, but she could have been. She had the good instincts, man. Save, 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 man. Google, or I'd say Bing, since I'm supposed to be a Microsoft guy, is your friend. If you don't know the answer, Google it. And it's interesting. Microsoft has their own customer source website. How many people have gotten in on customer source for any reason? Okay, a good portion of you, okay? So you can go in and find these answers, all of them. Problem is, you can't find them in Microsoft. So here's what you do. You Google them, they bring up the Microsoft site, and then you get into it by way of clicking the link. Now it saves you time and money. Good luck. Okay. How do you print GP reports in Adobe or Excel? You having problems with that, blah, 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 right? Okay. Basically, the answer is it ain't easy. Okay. Let's say we want to print a detailed trial balance, better known to you accountants or us accountants, us bean counters, as a general ledger. So we go and we print a trial balance and we print detail. And we also modify so we can see what dates and stuff. This is for 2002. I don't want that. I'll do 2014. I'll go to destination. Okay. If you click on File, you can print in text format, comma delimited format, Adobe PDF, Excel, HTML. The only three that ever get used: comma delimited, tab delimited, and Adobe. So Adobe, if you wanted to print something in a PDF, this would be one way to do this. You do, of course, have to have Adobe Reader installed to work. And to be honest, mine is a little flaky right now. Here's another thing. For those of you that have Adobe Writers, you could actually put it to the screen first. Okay, so this on the screen, and then you can send to mail recipient in PDF form. Yes, I knew there was one I missed. You know, when you click printer and go print here, yeah, and then you have an Adobe printer as well as your regular printers, and you do that. I'm not sure I have one. Yes, I do. Look at that. And I click print, and then it'll pop for a name. Note to people who are not on GP 2013, you have to reset this before you print. GP 2013, as you saw, very nice feature, nicest one in the book. You can set your printer as you're doing this. And how quickly I forget. I forgot that there was a time before when people couldn't do that. You know, on GP 2010 and before, you have to set it before you start the print. Oh yes, the Excel thing. You want to do comma delimited. Okay, that's the only. There's no Excel native thing. Certain reports, like a summary trial balance, aren't too bad in Excel. But a detailed trial balance, those very things, those headers that make things nice here, oh gosh, now I got a parse nightmare. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Dave Feenstra, our resident programmer, actually has designed a little application that when you print 4 reports, either the summary trial balance, the detailed trial balance, or the history of those two for prior years, will automatically put it in an Excel format and open an Excel spreadsheet and put it in one line. GP, formerly known as Great Plains, is not a Microsoft product. Though Microsoft says it's our product, it isn't. And they've never, and that is the one thing, I'm sure everybody has put, there's a product suggestion thing on customer source, and people have, a lot of the new features that they have put in are because people have over and over and over again requested it. I sure wish they'd do that. Now, having said all that, handle with care. I mean, some things are still kind of involved, and I like to empower people, but I don't want people to get reckless either, because if you do it wrong, bad things can happen. Hopefully you gain something here, and feel free to try some of that. So, thanks.